Hello, Helena. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, goodness. Thank you so much for being here. I would love, please, for the sake of for anybody who hasn't met you yet, who doesn't know your background, give us a glimpse into who you are and tell us a bit about your story, please.
My background is in human resource management. I went to university. I completed a Bachelor of Business Management and HR. And straight out of uni, my first job actually was working in a correctional centre. So I worked in a jail, primarily just doing recruitment for the centre. So hiring, nurses and doctors and correctional officers and admin staff and that sort of thing. And yeah, that sort of led me down the path to towards the end of that particular job. I actually ended up working with inmates prior to their release, just to talk to them sort of about prepping for interviews and that sort of thing on the outside world. So it was really, really insightful. And I really loved my career in HR, and it sort of took me through a few different jobs. But my most recent job actually was in a career where I actually had to work away from home 4 nights a week. And so that sort of led me down the path of looking for something different, because I knew that I definitely didn't want to keep living away from home. It was a massive struggle for me personally. I did it for 2.5 years, so 4 nights away for 2.5 years is a pretty long time. I was engaged at the time. I'm now married, which is exciting. So yeah, it didn't affect our relationship or anything like that, but it just made the time that we had together very scarce and very precious. And I think that's sort of what got my husband and I into looking for something more, because, he was still working long hours as well within his own career. And we just got to this point where we realized that, to be honest, we had a lot of money because we were both working a lot, but we didn't have any time with each other. And we just thought, there is no point in being, having excess money if you can't even see each other during the week. So, it sort of went on to this bit of a journey of self-discovery, I suppose. And someone actually handed Grant, my husband, a copy of Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And so it sort of started on this journey of personal development. And as soon as Grant read it, he forwarded it on to me and said, I really think you need to read this. It's just a different way of looking at society and the way that the world works, basically, that him and I had not previously been exposed to. We live in regional Australia. We both come from pretty traditional families. So we both just had really traditional upbringings, and it was really important within our families to get a good education, get a good job, work hard, earn money. And that's all we knew. And that's all a lot of people now are exposed to. So yeah, that's sort of what got us started on this journey, I suppose. And that's a little bit about me.
And which of you discovered the SFM first?
That was Grant, yeah. So once he read Rich Dad Poor Dad, he started to look online for a few more resources like that, and he ended up looking up videos on YouTube of Robert Kiyosaki, and that's when he actually came across the Lifestyle Teams video. Okay. And yeah, he clicked on it, and he'd sort of looked into a few different online opportunities previously, but had never really believed enough in them to actually take it to that next level. So when he came across this, he sort of mentioned to me as a bit of a side note, I found this, this training online and I'm really interested in it. But I think I just thought initially that it was just going to be another one of these things that he would check out, but not sort of, fully take to the next level. So yeah, that was sort of how we originally came across SFM. And it wasn't sort of until it got to the point where he's like, I really want to invest a lot into this, because at that stage, once we decided that it wasn't working for us, me working away from home, him working really long hours, we realized that we wanted to move back to my hometown and a place where he has a lot of family as well, so that we could start our own recruitment company, which would have been just a traditional bricks and mortar business. And we literally got a company name set up. We had everything ready to go for that business. And that's literally when SFM came into our lives. And Grant initially thought that he would use that training that he was doing online in order to bring some of the activities from our traditional business online, just to try and make that work a little bit more efficiently for us, rather than having to have everything on the offline side of things. So yeah, that was his initial sort of purpose, I guess, for going through the training. And when it got to a point where, you know, he'd been going through the modules and the opportunity came to, you know, invest more into additional training, that's when we had to sit down and say which path we're going to go on. You know, do we actually want to do the online thing as, you know, as our primary business, or do we want to have our traditional business as our primary business? And the more that we weighed up the opportunities with both, and, you know, the advantages and the disadvantages, the online thing was the way to go. Like, we just went, this is a no-brainer. We won't have to have expenses like rent and employees and, you know, an actual building and insurance. Absolutely. And I actually said to Grant right at the start of when we were about to set up this business, and I was planning to leave my job to go and do this full time, I said to Grant, like, we were engaged at the time and we'd already set a date for our wedding. And I said to him, okay, so when we go on our honeymoon, what does that mean for the business? Like, how is that going to work for us? Because as far as I'm aware, initially it's just going to be me running things. If I'm not there, it's not going to do anything. So how's that going to work in, you know, with going on holidays and things like that? So that was just another reason that we just kind of went, traditional business is hard work, and we'd seen a lot of people around us go through that. But yeah, when we sort of looked online, we went, hang on a minute, we can set up systems that can be working for us regardless of whether we're sitting there at the computer monitoring them or not. They can just be running in the background. And that was a definite winner for us.
Yeah. So you just mentioned the two words, hard work, with relation to the brick and mortar, the traditional concept of earning money by trading your time. But I would like, just because I want people to have a proper understanding of what it is that we do and what it is that we offer, I don't want them to get the impression that this is a get-rich-quick scheme.
Oh, definitely not.
But there's also hard work required of what we're offering and what we're doing. So can you give us a picture of what that's looked like for you and Grant?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, as of the date of filming this, so, you know, we're in April of 2018. In June of 2017 is when I quit my full-time job, which meant that I was now seeing my husband every single day, which was exciting. We hadn't done that for a few years. And when it got to that stage, I just went, okay, I'm going to get fully involved in this training and I'm going to have that as my full-time position. So in order to get us set up to the point where we actually had those systems working for us, it honestly was, for us, like the way that we worked it was a full-time job and it was hard work. However, it's sort of in a different way. And I think that you find that when you're so passionate about something, the hard work side of it doesn't really come into it as much, because it's something that you feel like there's a greater purpose, and the reason behind why you're doing it is so much more fulfilling than actually having to turn up to a job that you're unfulfilled by and having to be there at a certain time and having to be there for, you know, 10 hours a day and then leaving. And in my case, it was saying goodbye to my husband for 4 nights a week. So, yeah, the hard work stuff definitely comes into it still. And the way that we actually got it set up, which is definitely not the way that everybody does it, but this was the way that worked for us, was to have me working on the business full time while Grant was still working in his job full time, because it just meant that we could reinvest 100% of our earnings into our business. As the money started to come in, we could just keep reinvesting so that we could keep growing that business. And, you know, a lot of people within this industry have the feeling that they need to go all in from day one, which for them might be quitting their job. But for us, we just knew that wasn't going to work for us. We just weren't in the mindset where we thought that from day one we can support 2 full-time incomes. And look, that's just, you know, honestly what it was like for us. And it's, to be honest, worked really well. So it's been 10 months now that I've been working on this full time. And look, full time does not mean every single day for 10 hours I'm sitting at a computer. Definitely not. But in the first few months, at the very least, that's exactly what it looked like, because that's what I was used to as part of a routine. Like, going to work for me meant 10 hours of sitting at a computer. And so it meant that I was super productive in those first few months as well. And as anyone within this business will attest to, getting everything set up and, you know, putting in the groundwork is absolutely the hardest part of it. But once you have these things up and running, it's literally just the monitoring and, you know, improving things. And some days you're going to put in longer hours than others. Some days you might not have to put in any hours because everything's just doing its thing and you just sit back and watch it. But there's definitely still hard work. That's for sure.
So it sounds like it's been a very positive experience for you. But even still, it sounds like Grant brought this prospect to you. And so I'm just curious, and listening to all of this, were there any moments of apprehension or reservation on either of your part, or both of you?
Most definitely. On both, actually, at varying stages. And I've said this previously, like working in a partnership, whether that's with an independent partner or with, you know, your husband, it's definitely challenging at times, but it can be twice as rewarding as well. We find that obviously you're sort of bouncing off one another's energy. So if we're having this high and this amazing day, then often the other one is high as well. But if we're going through some challenges, it can be twice as challenging at the same time. But I think probably for me, the initial part of it, that was when I was most skeptical, because I was unfamiliar. I didn't really understand what this training program involved. I didn't understand the whole online thing. For me was a little bit iffy initially because I'd never sort of been exposed to it, I guess. So anything new sort of coming in, initially we think, oh, you know, there's going to be some doubts and some fears around that. And for me, honestly, what really sold me on this was Grant actually came across the videos in August of 2016. And then in December of 2016, they actually held a live event in Brisbane in Australia. And so for us, Grant just went, look, this is going to be a perfect opportunity for you to actually be able to meet people that are going through this in person. You can meet Q and J, the founders, in person. And honestly, like that day fully changed me 100%. And it really was for me being able to have that physical, you know, personal contact with people, which you can do online, obviously, but just in a different way. And it really, really helped me to affirm that this is something that I wanted to be a part of. And just being there in the audience and having I didn't have any preconceptions. And I've said this to people before, like, when everyone comes in, obviously they go through the modules. That's the first thing they do. And that was something I hadn't done. So if you would have put 3 people in front of me on that day and said, pick out Stu and Jay, I couldn't have done it. That's literally how little I knew about the company at that stage. But that was honestly the best thing for me, I think, because I just went in just with an open mind there to support my husband. And just went and just met so many incredible people, and just the vibe and just the feeling, I guess, for me, I just knew that was something I wanted to be a part of. And so literally that following day, I said to Grant, what can I do to help you get this off the ground?
That's so great.
So initially it was definitely my skepticism, but he was just 100%, I really want to do this. But I was a little bit unsure. And then as we've sort of gone through it, obviously we've approached a lot of challenges, which at different times has sort of challenged each of us, I suppose. But we've managed to get through everything so far. And even now we're still going through challenges, because as your business develops and it gets to that next stage, it comes with a different set of challenges, I suppose. Right. Even the pressure the pressure that we've put on ourselves to then, because we've been seeing results, to then keep that consistent and keep that coming, because we know that we can do it, but sometimes it's just a matter of, figuring out how to get to that next stage. Yeah,
that's good. So was he signed up at that point when you guys went to that first event? You were, or he was, okay. Yeah. And so
PA Gold, when we went
to that event. Okay. So at that point, it was primarily his thing at that point. Okay. Yeah. And then afterwards is when you were like, I want to be part of this. I want to support you. What does that look like? Okay. That's magnificent. I really love that. Yeah. And what have been some of your surprises along the way? And I don't just mean professionally. It could be personally. It could be relationally between you and Grant. It could be just within yourself. But give us I guess I want a taste of how this training, because it's really a holistic training in some sense. How has this holistic training affected you and influenced your life on a grander scale?
Yeah, I think probably one of the biggest surprises for me is to see the changes within myself. And I think that comes from, you know, when Grant first started getting into the training, the first thing that I noticed is that he would approach situations differently. And basically what I mean by that is that, not that before he had a narrow mindset, but I think it was just, it was directed in a way that is completely influenced by our upbringing. And that was exactly the same with me, is that you, particularly like being in regional Australia, there's not a lot that you get exposed to, I suppose, and you just sort of take everything from your surroundings, as we do, and there's not really a lot of, I don't know, a lot of room for movement, I suppose. And that's something that we weren't consciously aware of until we started going through this training. And for us, even more so than the technical side of things, it was the broadening of our mindsets. It was the personal development and personal growth that we were witnessing in each other, which just has allowed us to approach situations in a different way. Even within, you know, our families and our friendship groups outside of this, you know, this online community, it just makes you think about things differently, and it makes you just be more open. Whereas previously we might have said, oh, you know, why are they doing that? And not really understanding why people make certain decisions in their lives, or why it might seem crazy to us initially, but for them, it just makes total sense. And I think now we're just more appreciative of everybody's, you know, values and morals, and how that all comes into play within every person that we meet. And that's been particularly evident within the community, because, you know, every person that we meet, we instantly feel a connection to, because we've all been brought here for some reason or another. And you're going to find connections with people, even having not met them before. And it's pretty incredible to then be able to go to a live event and feel like you already know most of the people in the room, even without meeting them. But yeah, so that's probably one of the biggest surprises, is just that connection that we feel, even in the rest of the world as well, I guess. Like, it's just having that exposure, I think, has definitely just grown us as people and just made us, better, I think.
That's beautiful. I really appreciate that. And a couple times in listening to you speak, I was reminded of the first time that I met Mitch and Jordy.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know that there was such a thing as like a Mitch and Jordy. The only reason I had even heard of Mitch White was because Tim Lowe, who's brought me in, he shared one of Mitch's ads as just to give us something, a sample of a well done ad. So I watched it, but even still, something being defined as well done when you have no frame of reference was really like, okay, that's nice, thanks for sharing, you know. So it was so funny meeting them, because like I remember Jordy said something, and he betrayed the fact that he assumed that I knew of them, and I'm like, I'm sorry, but I don't know who you are. And I don't know about this we that you keep referring to. Yeah. And he was so charming. He says, and he started to laugh. He said, I forgot that some people don't know who we are. And so it was great, because we sat there and he literally told me his story and how they came to work together, and just the fun adventure that they've been on. And that really, it touches on what you were just saying about just the quality of the people that we have within the community, the connections that we have, and the camaraderie that we have within the community.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It lends itself so significantly to our success. Yeah. So if Grant were here right now, and I don't know if you feel at liberty to speak for him, but can you tell us, what do you think his greatest surprise was in all of this? What's taken him aback and just gone like, I cannot believe this, because when I signed up for this, I thought I was signing up for this, and all of a sudden this has come about as well.
I don't really know what he would say his biggest surprise was, but I definitely know that he would say that when he did sign up to do this online training, and initially when he just thought that it was about being able to utilize the training for our traditional business, I can 100% guarantee that it wouldn't have looked like what it does today. And like, we've been with SFM for nearly 2 years now, and our lives 2 years ago just are so different to what they are today. And not even in the fact that, you know, I now don't have a traditional job, but just in the way that we even make decisions as a couple. Like it's just completely changed. I don't know. And I think it's really wonderful because like Grant and I have been together for 8 years. So it's not like we had a new relationship or anything coming into this. We definitely knew who each other was. We knew who, you know, the different decision making and stuff that we had. And it's changed, but we've grown together. And I think that when we see people involved in this, it makes us a little bit sad when we find that, you know, sometimes people don't even tell their partners that they're doing this because they think that they're not going to be supportive, or, you know, they're just not going to understand. And that really hurts us because we know that how much together we've grown and how much, you know, we've grown individually, but then we've also grown as a couple. That, yeah, we never would have expected that coming into this online training for our business. But yeah, that's probably one of the things that I think Grant would have said that we find, that we've found to be surprising. And I think too, it's definitely been for the better. And it just makes us really, even going through like, you know, the platinum process and being able to really identify our individual values and then how that works together when we actually join it together as a couple, and, you know, actually knowing what each other's purpose is in life, but then how does that work together as a couple as well. And just being able to relate back to that in certain situations is just, it's so helpful. Like it's this massive point of reference that we didn't have before. And, you know, now we can actually, I don't know, provide more reasoning, I suppose, with each other as well. So it just, our lives are completely different than when we joined. And it's definitely been a steady growth. Like, I don't think you realize that you are making changes until you sort of look back, or until you sort of look outside the community as well. And that's what we found is we have had challenges with, you know, family and close friends and that, because we have been making these changes within ourselves and obviously within our business, which they are questioning because it's something that, as I said earlier, you know, they haven't been exposed to. And so it's unfamiliar and they're not really quite sure why we're making these decisions. But that's why it's, for us, it's so amazing to be doing this together, because we just know that who cares what everyone else, like, you know, this is our life. It's our life to live and get the most out of. And that's definitely encouraged us to go outside our comfort zone on many occasions since joining.
So you referred to platinum, and, you know, some people listening to this might not understand. I've in other videos, I've referred to platinum as our branding process, but you also mentioned the word purpose, finding your purpose. And my passion, one of my passions is, and my mission, I would say, in what I'm doing here is I'm appealing to people to consider an alternative life that permits them space in their life to pursue their passions, which I believe will ultimately lead them to their purpose. And the platinum incubation process really helps us to hone in on that process and really like laser target our focus on exactly that. For the sake of those who don't have the inside scoop on what that is, can you just give us a small taste of what it looked like for you and Grant?
Yeah, definitely. So when we actually went to that live event in Brisbane, we were positioned at gold. Literally the next day we upgraded to platinum because we had the funds to do it, and that definitely wasn't something that was holding us back. It was just that Grant was a bit uncertain as to what my involvement was going to be, and I think he wanted that before we sort of moved forward, I guess. And then so the reason that we personally decided to do platinum is that we just knew that we wanted, we sort of wanted just to find out a bit more and just to go into that self-discovery process that we hadn't done before. Like, we knew that it was not something missing, but it was just going to be, we knew it was going to be an amazing experience. And so basically what it looked like for us, it was about 11 months later where we attended the live Platinum Brand Incubator Workshop, which was in Perth in Australia. And basically what that looked like for us, we went in with a really open mind. We weren't too sure what to expect from it. And after 3 days of workshopping, it honestly just it provided clarity for us. So basically, what it involved was looking back on your life and just going through, like, for me personally, after the experience, I kind of went, in the past, I don't generally look back on the past. I'm definitely more of a future thinker, a future planner, and what's happened in the past has happened, and let's move on and let's learn from that. But I'd never actually gone back and reflected how my past has made me the person that I am today. And so that was a massive takeaway for me, is just being able to just sort of talk through some of those experiences and seeing how, that has really shaped who I am today, and how that has affected, my personal values and like all that sort of thing. And it honestly was just this like life-changing experience where, I don't know, you go in thinking, oh, I'm going to get a personal brand out of this. This will be great. And they'll give me a logo and a website and great, all the technical stuff. But for us, it just gave us that clarity of, okay, these are my personal values. This is what I actually value. And I hadn't really thought about that before. And the same for Grant. And it was really great to be able to see where that overlapped for us as well, which definitely would have been as a result of being in a relationship for the last 8 years. We obviously have some common values, but it was really cool to see the things that differed as well within us, and how that had sort of been impacted from our past experiences and from our childhoods. And I guess that sort of, in a way, is what we got out of it, and just being able to get a purpose statement which truly reflects who you are, and then for us to be able to to sort of combine ours to then move forward within our business branding as well.
It's really a magnificent process. And I just think listening to you speak of doing it together with your spouse is so powerful. I mean, I just imagine that the enrichment that you would experience relationally between one another, which I've heard you already allude to several times. I was so impacted by that process myself that for Christmas, I actually bought my husband a session with JJ to pinpoint his purpose.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. And, there's been so many times I would love to have my husband here doing this together with me, and perhaps he will one day. In fact, that's actually the only reason I got involved, was because I was looking for something for him.
Oh, wow.
But, what I have found with our purpose statements is, for me, in terms of how I apply it, it validates me in terms of what I am inclined to give myself to. So it's become a really great screening device for me to filter out what I'm inclined to do out of obligation versus what I'm inclined to do because this actually aligns with who I am. And then relationally, like, granted, I don't have the depth that you have because you guys went into this together, but even just having my husband's purpose statement, it gives me understanding, wait a minute, I understand why we have such a different view on this matter, because these are the lenses that we're looking through. And so even just having that tool, relational tool, has been significant for us.
Yeah. And I think too, even with that, like, it's broadened our minds to then start looking into other training resources and other books and that are related to that are going to help us to learn more about each other. And one that we actually both finished recently was The 5 Love Languages.
Yes.
And it was like incredible.
Yes.
Like, it was something that honestly, before this whole journey, we would not have even looked at. We both would have been like, what's this rubbish? No, not going to bother, not going to bother wasting my time on that, because, I would have been like, well, Grant's never going to look at it, so there's no point in me doing it. And that was something that we both did together, that we just thought before this, we never would have been open to the idea of doing something like that. But it alone was incredible. One book that we both happened to read. Like, it was amazing.
Just wait. When you have children, I mean, you're doing all of this work so early on. So, I mean, you're putting yourselves in such fabulous positions. When you have children, all of the work that you're doing now, you get to apply to them and understanding their idiosyncrasies. And oh my goodness, it's just such a richly rewarding endeavor. So I applaud you both for doing this preliminary work that you're doing as a couple, because it's laying a foundation for what you'll have as a family.
Yeah,
really beautiful.
Well, that's really exciting. Yeah, definitely something we'll be doing.
So I am curious now because I've heard a lot of references to transformation, and I'm wondering now, how have your goals evolved? Because I suspect they've also changed, right? As along with the two of you changing. Can you give us a taste of that?
Yeah. Well, we've had a lot of goals that have changed since we first started, and I think the more you get into this, the bigger your goals get, because you realize that really you don't have that many limitations. And to be honest, where Grant and I are at within our lives, we're not tied down to anything or anyone except for each other. And it's just given us so much more flexibility, and even just an awareness of that flexibility, which I think that we just didn't know before. I think, you get used to the being committed to a workplace and being committed to a job. And we now realize that, when our business gets to the point where we both won't have to work full time, then we really do have an unlimited, choices and options. And that's definitely something we're going through at the moment. And there's been, I'm sure Grant wouldn't mind me sharing, but for the last since about December last year, so about the last 5 months, Grant's been on this, this sort of process within his head of going, when should I quit my job? When's going to be the best time? Because it gets to that point where we're going, is it going to be better for him to be full-time within the business and being committed to that? Or is it good for, while we've been keeping on growing the business, to just have that regular income coming in? And so literally that's been a bit of a, something that we've had to consider over the last few months. And every month it kind of goes, okay, is it now? Like there's sort of been that when is the right decision? And that's always been a goal of ours, like to have both of us, fully involved within this business and have it to a point where it does financially support us, because it means that we don't have any boundaries, and both of us have always lived pretty close to home, within sort of a couple of hours. And we've sort of realized now that we've actually just started in the last couple of weeks, we've started selling a lot of our possessions, not for a financial side of things, just for a freedom, clearing out, just decluttering our lives. Because I think in the past it was, for us, a lot about possessions, because that's what everybody around us was just like, I have the money to buy a boat and buy a motorbike and buy a house and buy all these things. And so, in our early 20s, that's what we did. We just went, okay, well, let's buy this and buy this. And then all of a sudden we now realize that that's not fulfilling. Like we just realize that we have a lot of stuff that we now want to get rid of, because for us, we just know that the less we have, but the more fulfilled we are together, that is so much more rewarding. So so we've actually just started this decluttering process to then be able to make it even easier to sort of move on to that next stage for us, which is really exciting. But so that's one of our goals currently. It doesn't have a time limit on it. We actually have our house for sale at the moment, and that's sort of been a bit of a journey on its own, but that's okay. That's what it's like, I think, when you're trying to sell a house. So it's exciting.
That does sound very exciting. So I am curious now, and if you could go back in time as the person you are today, knowing what you know now, and maybe speak to Grant at the beginning of this process, or even speak to yourself when you first got involved, what would you say to either of you or both of you?
I think to myself, I would say to have, a more open mind, possibly. Like I always had 100% trust in Grant, and I've always trusted his decisions, even though sometimes I think they're crazy initially. But that's just the way that we work. He's definitely the ideas man and the one that moves us forward and pushes us into that next stage. But equally, I need to be there as a support. And I think that if I had done that a couple of months earlier, we might have, obviously had a bit of a faster transition for us. But to be honest, I don't really have any regrets as such, because I think that it played out the way that it needed to. I think that if Grant had pushed me into becoming more involved when I wasn't ready for it, I don't think it would have worked out as well, because I needed to go through that development as well, because it was something that was so unfamiliar to me that I just wanted to, I wanted to make sure it was right. And I think that, you know, in like for my personality, I am the cautious, the planner, the, you know, that's me, and that's always been who I am. But now I can do it in a more open-minded way. And that's probably been one of the biggest changes from today to going back to right at the start is, yeah, just recognizing that I don't need to be as overly cautious as I probably was and as I used to be. But yeah, to be honest, there's nothing really that I would change. I think that everything happened the way that it was meant to, and we still believe that, even as it comes to the challenges present itself to us, even though it's really hard to deal with at times, we just need to keep reminding each other, this is happening for a reason. There's a lesson that we need to learn as a result of this. And this journey can't be easy, because then everybody would be doing it. You really need to be committed and just show that you are dedicated to doing this, because yeah, it's not for everybody. And I think that that's something that we've definitely become more aware of. The more members we have coming in, and just being able to have more and more conversations with people, more and more authentic conversations with people. And that's something that's really, really important to Grant and I as well, is just being able to make sure that we can be honest in our intentions, honest with anyone that's considering this, because yeah, it's tough, but it's so much more rewarding than I thought it was. And so, yeah, if I was to go back to day one, I would probably tell myself, trust the process, because you go through the journey for a reason, and each thing comes up within that journey at the time that it's meant to. So
that's good. Thank you. And finally, in closing, is there anything stirring inside of you that you think you ought to voice before we say goodbye? Keeping in mind, again, that this is for subscribers, people that are considering an online business.
I think, I think that it's definitely, if you know within yourself that you want something more out of your life, and you feel like there's something that, if you're not committed and if you're not happy in your current situation, then why not give it a go? Do something about it, because the only regret you're going to have is not trying it, because that's what I look back now, and if I think that, if Grant hadn't clicked on that, what would our lives be looking like now? And it would be completely different. It would just be, we would have been stuck in the same narrow-minded tunnel that's all we knew. I just think there's so many more opportunities out there for people within the world, and we're really, really passionate about giving people that opportunity. So I think if you're sitting there and you're watching this and you're thinking, oh, I wonder if something can change in my life, whether that is, down the path of starting an online business, or whether that is just simply finding out more about yourself and your personal development and the growth side of things. If there's anything within that sort of realm that you're not 100% happy with, I would definitely give it a go. Yeah. You just never know what you're going to get out of it.
Yeah. That's beautiful and well said. Thank you so much for the gift of your time and your experience, your insights. I really appreciate it. And I know that countless other people are going to appreciate it as well. So thank you.
No worries. Thanks for having me, Sarah. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Helena.